My name is Ayanni, and I am the Assistant Director for Graduate Engagement at the University of Florida Center for the Humanities and Public Sphere. One of the center mission is to support graduate students in the humanities to broadly envision their own career path in many exciting fields, both in academia and beyond. So in collaboration with the humanities faculty and graduate coordinators, the center has been organizing a series of programs, workshops, events to expand graduate training in the humanities. And today, in partnership and with the support of the Department of English, we put together a unique career diversity panel featuring Dr. Megan Daly, Assistant University Librarian of Classics, Philosophy, and Religion at the University of Florida, Dr. Jacob Watson, Beyond120 Lecturer and Undergraduate Research Coordinator, also at UF, and Dr. Ayanni from the Modern Language Association. And it is our hope that through their stories, graduate students in the humanities and anyone else who is joining us today can be inspired to imagine and seek out different professional opportunities. And a special thank goes to Professor Roger Maioli and Professor Lila Rosenberg from the English department who made this panel possible. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Megan Daly. Dr. Daly is the Assistant University Librarian of Classics, Philosophy, and Religion at the University of Florida George Smathers Libraries. She received her Ph.D. from the Classics Department at the University of Florida in 2013. After graduation, she explored the fields of museum studies and library and information science, while also teaching as an adjunct instructor at the University of North Florida. Her current library position allows her to work in various areas like library research instruction and collection development. And now, Megan, the floor is yours. Let me stop sharing and I see if we are we recording? Yes, great.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully now everyone can see the presentation. Great, okay, thank you. So first off, I would like to thank the center for having me participate in this panel. And I would like to thank you all for coming today. As Sarah introduced me, I'm Megan Daly, and I'm the Assistant University Librarian of Classics, Philosophy, and Religion here at UF. I work at Library West, so if you ever see me around, feel free to say hello. I'll explain in a few minutes what my job entails, but first I want to share my email address with you. It's mmdaly@ufl.edu. And I want you to feel free to contact me after this presentation if you want to follow up with me about anything that I mentioned today, in addition to the Q&A that we're going to have at the end of this session. So from classicist to librarian, how did I get here? First, I'll talk about my education and my professional experiences, and then I'll talk a bit about my current position. And then I'll try to address how my education and professional experiences prepared me for my career as a librarian. And finally, I will mention a few things I wish I would have considered more when I was a graduate student. So let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, so my education, a little over 20 years ago now. It's hard to think that, but it's been a little over 20 years. I arrived at UF as a freshman and an accounting major, and I signed up for my accounting class and art history, mythology, and geography. And I enjoyed my gen ed classes so much that I decided to change my major and become a classics major with an art history minor. And the advisor that I spoke with told me that many people who pursue careers in classics usually get PhDs. So that year, I decided I needed to get a PhD so I could become a classics professor. And this was a big decision for an 18-year-old. And little did I know at the time that there's a lot more you can do with a humanities education other than just becoming a professor. But anyway, I completed over 11 years of university and earned 3 degrees in classics, all at UF. But during these 11 years, I also traveled multiple times. For a classicist, it's always a good idea if you can manage to go and see the places and things that you're studying. So I attended programs at the American School of Classical Studies at Athens, the American Academy in Rome, and the Goethe Institute in Munich. And I found these experiences to be invaluable for my education and career. And then just before graduating with my PhD, which happened about 10 years ago now, I fully realized the challenges of the academic job market. So I started thinking differently about where I wanted to build my career and realized I was interested in educational environments outside of the traditional classroom. So I always felt energized by and at home in museums. So I'm drawn to them whenever I visit a new place. So after I finished my PhD, I decided to take some master's level courses in museum studies at UF. And I did this simultaneously while teaching as an adjunct instructor at the University of North Florida. So it was a very busy time for me, but I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot both in the classroom and while working with museum collections. So I put together my first exhibit with my graduate student colleagues while I was in this program. And then I started working on a grant project with the Latin and Greek rare books in the Smathers libraries, which led me to taking some master's level courses in library and information studies online through FSU. So that's a little bit about my education. And honestly, it came with some surprises because I did not originally intend to take more classes after I finished my PhD, but life just took me down that road, so I went with it. So my professional experiences, and I'm sure a lot of you will be able to relate to these. While partaking in all of these educational programs, I accumulated a variety of professional experiences, which prepared me well for my eventual career as a librarian. While I was in graduate school, I served as a graduate student instructor and teaching assistant for a wide range of classes, both inside and outside of classical studies. And then I taught various courses for UNF, including a study abroad course. So by the time I applied for my librarian position, which required instruction experience on the position description, I had over 10 years of instruction experience. And I had also been participating in conferences for nearly 10 years at that point. So overall, I was quite experienced with speaking in front of groups. And then it seemed a little strange to me when I was making this PowerPoint to put reading, thinking, and writing on it. But I really do believe that taking graduate courses, especially PhD level courses, greatly increases one's ability to read, think, and write critically and proficiently. So these are priceless skills that anyone with a humanities graduate degree is going to pick up and be able to apply to any profession and to daily life itself. And then when I was working with museum collections and library collections, that of course directly prepared me for working in Library West for very obvious reasons. So my current position, all of these things made me well equipped to work in my current position as an academic librarian. And it may seem like no surprise that an academic education in classics and librarianship would prepare me for a job as a classics librarian. My position is tenure track, so I'm expected to do a lot of the same things other tenure track faculty do. I engage in research, so I spend some of my time creating publications, presentations, and posters. And I also engage in service activities, both here at UF and outside at UF at various different levels. But as a librarian, I do a lot of things I never would have imagined myself doing when I was in graduate school for classics. And every day as a librarian is very different, which makes things really fun and interesting. A really big portion of my effort goes towards collection development. And while graduate school did teach me about what books, databases, and journals are important, now I'm managing budgets and thinking about different types of user access, learning about vendor products, and the usability of different ebook platforms. I also spend my time on reference service, meeting either one-on-one with people to help them with their research, or working with people over email or phone or chat service to address whatever library questions they might have. And again, you never know what kind of questions you're going to get, so you really need to know how to think on your feet and know how to solve problems and improvise, like think on the spot. I also do a lot of outreach, meeting people in Library West or out at events or on the plaza or at the Rights Union. We're out there tabling quite a lot. You've probably seen us. We hand out flyers and t-shirts and little notebooks and things like that. So hopefully you've stopped in and talked to us at some point. But we're there to let people know what kinds of resources we have available for them at the libraries. And then I create book displays and exhibits to spread awareness of the collections we have for our patrons to use. And there are also a lot of random activities to engage in, like planning events or guest lectures, participating in or leading trainings or workshops, creating research guides, and all sorts of things like that. So there's also a good amount of flexibility in the position as well, which allows me to choose which types of projects to pursue. So it's very intellectually engaging and a lot of fun. So how did my educational background and professional experiences prepare me for my various duties as a librarian? Some of my experience directly translates. So the years I spent teaching Latin and Greek and other courses helped prepare me for teaching students about using databases and finding peer-reviewed articles. But it also allowed me to become comfortable speaking in front of groups, giving presentations, communicating with different types of people, creating collaborations, and forming working relationships. And these are things that you do in all kinds of different career paths. My conferencing experience helped me with this as well, and also taught me how to network across my profession. Again, something that all career paths require you to do. And then teaching a variety of courses broadened my range of knowledge. That helps with the variety of reference questions that I get asked every day. It also challenged me to push myself to tackle new obstacles. And when I found myself in those new situations, especially in the case of teaching the study abroad program, it improved my ability to improvise and think on my feet. And then the critical reading, thinking, and writing skills, as I mentioned before, are skills that are used every day, but really help with analyzing and solving problems. And then I believe my training as a classicist also taught me attention to detail, because I really don't think anyone can gain proficiency in ancient Greek without having a sharp attention to detail. And my work with museum and library collections helped prepare me for creating book displays and developing collections, but it also taught me how to synthesize information and take a group of stuff, make it all make sense, and then build a story out of it all. So when I reflect back on my educational background and professional experiences and how they prepared me for becoming a librarian, I'm very thankful that I got to do all the things I was able to do. But there are some things I wish I would have done differently. I'm glad I sat down in my final year of grad school and had the realization that my 18-year-old plan, my original plan as an 18-year-old, of getting a PhD and becoming a professor was not the only path for me, and that I could try other things and just see what happens. I would have liked to have had this realization earlier. So it's good that you all are here now, because perhaps you're getting an earlier start with having this more flexible perspective about your careers. I encourage you to also explore ways to gain more experience in the areas you think you might be interested in. You might find work opportunities that can lead you down different paths. For me, the grant project work I did in the Smathers libraries with the Latin and Greek rare books got me interested in library work, and it got me connected with people that could help get me thinking down that path. And I know that some of the students who have worked at Library West over the years have gone forward and decided to pursue librarianship. So some of these work experiences can be very impactful. There are also certificates that might be of interest to you. For example, there's a museum study certificate that you could couple with your other graduate courses if you are interested in that. There's also a digital humanities certificate out there that you could take. And these may provide additional experience that could come in handy for your career prospects later on. Internships also provide another avenue for experimenting with different paths and gaining new experience. The libraries actually have a graduate internship program for helping grad students expand their knowledge and their professional development. So there are definitely some great opportunities out there to explore and take advantage of. So this is my story, briefly, and I hope it was helpful in some way. And I look forward to hearing the questions you might have at the end of the session. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan, for this fantastic presentation. And if you have any question, please make sure that you save them for the Q&As at the end after the panelist presentation. Our second speaker today is Dr. Jacob Watson. He holds a PhD in English from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a specialization in film and media theory. Prior to coming to the University of Florida in 2020, he taught a wide variety of courses at UNC Chapel Hill, University of Georgia, Duke University, including science fiction, film, literature in the digital age, and digital cinema. As lecturer with Beyond120, he has designed 3 new courses: Intro to Research in the Liberal Arts and Sciences, Collaborative Research Experience for Undergrads, and Grad School 1-to-1. In addition to teaching these courses, his role involved developing, administering, and implementing scholarship, mentoring programs, excursion, workshops, speaking series, online skills module, website content, among other things. He also provides consultation for students interested in research involvement. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. All right, let me see if I can get this screen share going. Okay, can you see that? All right. So first of all, for context, what is Beyond120? The program that I work for. We are the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences Career Development and Experiential Learning Program, which basically means our mission is to help liberal arts and sciences students understand how to market their skills in a variety of career paths, giving a robust answer to the question, what can you do with a liberal arts degree? A big part of that is helping students gain experience as undergraduates, which we think of in terms of primarily internship, international experience, and research, which is my area. I do research. So we're a relatively small program. We have 5 full-time faculty, 1 part-time, and a staff member and a student intern. Our faculty are lecturer lines, so the promotion path is lecturer, senior lecturer, master lecturer. There are no tenuring positions in Beyond120. Given that, and that we're not what you would consider a traditional academic discipline, and the amount of program development work we do, I would characterize this job as what I would have seen when I was a graduate student as sort of hybrid academic, or alt-ac, if that term is still applicable. So for that reason, I want to kind of structure this in terms of, I'm going to explain what my job is, what my duties are, so you can see the differences from traditional academic employment, and see if this might be the sort of thing that would be fulfilling for you, and also how different skills from your graduate training could apply in this kind of non-traditional faculty role. So keep that in mind. A little bit about me. I did my first 5 years of college education at the University of Georgia. I did a bachelor's and a master's there in English. I had a philosophy minor. On paper, I had a philosophy minor. I actually took more philosophy than English courses in undergrad, and I did honors thesis in philosophy. And then UNC Chapel Hill, I was in the English department. I came in as a 20th century Americanist and quickly gravitated towards film and media theory and ended up with that concentration. After the PhD, so I got my PhD in 2019, in May of 2019, I think. And then in the fall, I was teaching a course on science fiction film at Duke and still teaching at UNC several courses, I think digital cinema, literature in a digital age, something like that. So how I came to find out about this job and apply to it, my spouse got a job at the University of Florida. So I started at Duke and UNC teaching these courses in August 2019. That's when I saw this job posted. Didn't know what an undergraduate research coordinator was, but I just applied to it and started in January 2020. I had accepted a postdoc at UNC, but I resigned so I could come here, and I've been here ever since. So my duties are still primarily teaching. I teach in Beyond 120. We teach a 3-3-2, which sounds like a lot of teaching, but you have to take into consideration these are 1 credits, predominantly 1 credits courses. So it's about a third of the assignments and course meetings of a traditional 3-credit course. Also, we do not have many publication expectations, if any. I do about a conference a year, and that is the extent of my scholarly involvement. So I'm really focused on the teaching. In addition to the teaching, we put together lots of different kinds of events for students. Programs, this is just a small kind of smattering of the programs. We do a lot of program development, and we do these things called excursions, which are trips that students can go on. We go to Washington, New York, London, Mexico, providing opportunities for students to get some networking opportunities and some real world experience in various fields. And since I'm the research person, I decided to start one to the Scripps Institute. And then there's a lot of other. So as far as the teaching, my primary class is Intro to Research. I wrote the first version of the syllabus of this course as part of my job application materials for the job, because I was aware that I would need to develop a course as one of my duties. So before I even got the job, I started thinking about what that course should be. And I drew a lot on teaching composition. So as some of you who are grad students may have had a similar experience to me. I taught a lot of writing courses as a graduate student. What students really need in terms of preparation for research involvement, there's a lot of overlap there. It's a lot of communication skills based things, getting comfortable talking to faculty, knowing how to represent themselves, talk about what they can bring to a lab position, write a really good professional email, research communication itself, how to formulate good questions and make them into better questions. So I took a lot from my composition teaching experience. And then, so I started January 2020, and I've been teaching this course since June of 2020, online and in person every summer, fall, and spring. So this is the majority of my teaching. I developed another course called Grad School 101. So both of these courses are really geared towards first generation students or students who have less institutional knowledge or institutional privilege to better understand how things work. And with the graduate school, it's not just how to get into graduate school, but also what is the actual cost and what are the tangible benefits of doing different kinds of graduate degrees. So and how to fund yourself, externally, internally, how to get money for things. So it's a lot of practical knowledge, but the other side of it is, again, communication skills and the kind of things that you learn teaching in a graduate program. So, writing a good statement of purpose, doing a graduate school interview. My last year of my PhD, I added a business unit to my composition course. So it's drawing on a lot of things that I had kind of previously taught in other contexts. And then some of the most fun courses I've been able to do, During the pandemic, I noticed kind of or became aware of a real need for accessible experiential opportunities that students can do when a lot of labs were closed or at minimum capacity. And so just providing a way for students to really engross themselves in a topic and a project. So I did basically a series of cure courses. The first one, that's course-based undergraduate research experience. So students are doing a whole project from inception to research paper, but collaboratively, all working together. The first one was on the 1918 influenza pandemic and the media conversation surrounding it. So we're looking at old newspapers and people talking about mask mandates and social distancing and all these kind of public health topics that we're familiar with today, but in a 1918 context. So that was a lot of fun. We did one on medical advertising that was kind of similar. The last one I did was on trust in the digital age. Originally, we were going to look at work with a resource that a researcher had created, this huge, enormous archive of anti-vax tweets that we were going to scrape for different kinds of data. But I always let the students' interests drive, and we ended up doing something on TikTok instead because Twitter is for old people. So workshops and events, again, bringing my humanities background to the position. Most of the workshops I do have something to do with humanities research because there's a demonstrated need for getting students interested. For example, a lot of pre-health students at UF have a misconception that they need to do a ton of core science, wet lab, bench science research, and it doesn't end up benefiting. We have the data from medical school admissions and stuff that, they not only are there not enough opportunities in that area to accommodate all the student demand, but they end up looking like everybody else on paper and it doesn't benefit them. So we do workshops kind of raising awareness of medical humanities, medical social science research, and really market that to pre-health students. We do workshops for law students and the importance of research. During the pandemic, digital humanities as a kind of way of remote research engagement. And we have one next week, getting started with non-STEM, 3 great student panelists. There's a project on Chat GPT, one on parasocial relationships in anime, and one on the Johns Committee. So it's a really exciting group of students talking about their projects. I can send you the details if you're teaching, if you want to come to that next week. Similar thing with the speakers I try to bring to campus. I want to broaden students' perceptions of what constitutes research, as well as help, especially students who are underrepresented in the research space, see themselves as part of the conversation. So last fall, we had Dr. Fakunle, who's a Johns Hopkins public health researcher who's trained in African storytelling and uses storytelling as an anti-racist research intervention. And this was a really well attended. We had like over 140 something students register for this. So in addition to events, again, programs, besides the day-to-day kind of administration of programs, where my background comes into it, like with the class scholars, which basically we're funding students to do a research project with a faculty member. So I do an orientation session for them. Midway through, I do a poster workshop just for them because they all present posters at the symposium, the undergraduate research symposium. And for a minority of students whose mentors are especially busy, they will come to me with, conference proposal drafts, ideas to brainstorm. So a lot of the background in teaching, writing, teaching research comes into play there. So we have, I'm not going to talk about every program because we have a lot of them, but to give another example, Chemistry Scholars is an alumni funded program. Just another thing to mention, a skill that if you're thinking about this kind of alternative academic career, I think advertising, marketing skills, I don't know exactly what terms to put on it, but developing promotion skills. We have students do day in the lab vlogs and blog posts as part of their involvement in our programs. We take a lot of pictures. I'm always trying to get student blurbs and sound bites and just marketing materials that we use in our annual report. We create packets that we send to potential alumni donors to generate enthusiasm for new programs. We use these materials to market to students to get them to apply to our programs. It's just a big part of it ends up being engaging in kind of promotional activities. Another skill set that comes into play, I think, is being able to communicate with very different groups of people. I think as academics, we get kind of embedded deeply within our own kind of weird communities, but with things like, so one program I created, the BMS Scholars, is with Bristol Myers Squibb. They're a big pharmaceutical company, drug development, that kind of thing. So not only is there an aspect of coaching the students how to interact with these industry mentors that they get paired up with, how to ask good questions and all that sort of thing, but also letting the industry people know the students' background and what they're working on and help them understand kind of the students' perspective. So working with different groups of people and kind of coordinating communication is a key skill. Scripts research. So another thing is, I've got time, right? Cool. Okay. So yeah, I started this excursion. I had developed a relationship with some people at Scripps. We helped recruit for their summer internship program. One of the skills we gain as academics, I think, is finding gaps and places to insert ourselves in the conversation and research. It's a similar kind of thing with developing programs. You want to look for, you know, what students are not being served, or where is their demand that's not being met. So we have all these great programs, I think, for students who want to go into government, politics, law, business. We didn't really have anything hands-on for the students who want to do like biomedical. So I developed this program. It's a very kind of low-cost one-day trip to go. 18 students went down to Scripps. This was 2 weeks ago. They get to have meals with faculty, go to poster sessions, lab tours, a postdoc gave a talk, info sessions about all the programs they can do at Scripps. And we got a lot of good feedback from students saying, you know, they're glad that now there's something like this for the sciencey students. And then just to tie it into humanities, I think another gap that I kind of noticed is not enough compensation and recognition for the great work that humanities faculty do mentoring research. So I created a faculty award focused, is student nominated, and it's focused on impact in research mentorship. And so the first one went to Dr. Celeste, and the next one went to Dr. Alberg, who I think is here on this call. So that's kind of fun. 2023, we haven't given one out yet, so could be anybody, could be you. Other duties, I do consultations. Students can book Mondays and Wednesdays, one-on-ones with me just to talk about their research goals. These are not like advising appointments. I don't do degree audits. I don't know anything about, you know, transfer credit. This is coming from like the kinds of meetings I would have with students in office hours, again, as an instructor. So talking about their goals, the challenges they're having, providing them with resources to help them, you know, work through whatever it is. Skills modules, another thing, if you're interested in this kind of work to develop, would be instructional technology skills. We use a program called Articulate Rise 360 or something like that. It makes things that are a lot nicer looking than anything I can make in Canvas. And so these are basically free, interactive courses, kind of like a LinkedIn Learning course that students can do on their own time. These are 4 of the ones that I've done, but we have a pretty broad menu of those. And then web design. So another skill you might think about developing if you're interested. I do the Beyond120 research and the Beyond124 faculty page of our website. The 4 faculty doesn't get a lot of traffic, so I don't worry too much about that one. But the research page, I really want to develop into kind of a central hub or jumping off point for students to start exploring research in class. So that's a work in progress. So if you're thinking of applying or going on the market and looking at positions like this, just a few quick pieces of advice. Definitely interview someone in the field. I was fortunate to have someone in my PhD program who was in an administrative position at Georgia Southern. She went on to get a degree in administration from Harvard. I think she's on the Massachusetts Board of Education now. But I think that the real key is in faculty, in academia, in academic advising, in student success. People have their own kind of languages and concerns and ways of speaking about things. It's really helpful just to talk to someone in a different role to understand what those different concerns are. Really deeply researching program websites was really key. For example, I was at UNC Chapel Hill. I didn't know anything about our Office of Undergraduate Research, but come to find out it's really the model program that UF's Center for Undergraduate Research is kind of based around. So studying related program websites to better understand undergraduate research, as a field, as a concept, was really helpful. Understanding the needs addressed by the position. So there's a National Council on Undergraduate Research, just kind of figuring out what they talk about at their roundtables and their professional meetings was key. What are the problems? What are the, underrepresented populations? What are the gaps? I did a practice talk and demo, which, depending on your program, people, if you're doing something that's very different from what other people in your program are going for, they may not be in a position to give you really specific feedback on, something like a vision presentation for a job that's all tech. But the process of just doing it, practicing it, seeing where the bugs are and kind of working it all out is really key. And then de-emphasize research specialization and leverage other skills. When I was doing the on-campus interview for this job, I found myself talking about experiences that I had as an undergrad, many, many years ago doing field work and stuff that I would never really think about myself bringing up in a job interview. But it's so important in this kind of program development role to understand the student perspective on things, the student impact of experiences. I talked about my dissertation work, not at all. So it's like I tell my students, it's not the flashiest thing you've done. It's the most relevant thing you've done that someone who's a job provider is going to care about. And then really just kind of branching outside of just your departmental mentors kind of goes back to the first point, but really look for the perspective of people who have done the closest thing to the specific kind of alt academic position that you're going for. And here is my contact information, echoing what Megan said. Feel free to take that down and reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with any of you.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Actually, if you don't mind, and Megan too, if you can write your email in the chat, so maybe it's easier for people, like students who are attending, to save it. Thank you, if you don't mind. And now our last but not least panelist is Dr. Ayanni Cooper. She's a visual rhetoric scholar whose research centers on multimodal text, particularly comics and animation. She earned her doctorate in English literature from the University of Florida in 2022 and works for the Modern Language Association as a program associate in the Department of Academic Program Services and Professional Development. Ayanni's work can be found in both public and scholarly forums, including the Los Angeles Review of Books and the forthcoming Religion and Horror Comics from Claremont Press. She also funded, produces, and co-hosts the podcast Sex, Love, Literature, which takes a semi-scholarly look at why and how media representation of sex, love, and desire matter. Ayanni's wider interests include monster theory, gender and sexuality studies, erotic and pornography studies, and podcasting. Thank you, Ayanni. The floor is yours.
Excellent. I'm so happy to be here to speak with you all. And Jacob and Megan, thank you for wonderful presentations. I think my presentation has some parity with things that you've been saying. So I'm going to jump right into it. I think everyone can see my screen, but I will just take it from there. So hello, my name is Ayanni Cooper. As Sarah said, I am a recent graduate of the English PhD program at UF. I am now located in New Jersey, so temperature-wise, a very, very different place. And I am a program associate with the Modern Language Association. So since everyone in the group are not just English-related folks, to explain what the MLA is very briefly, it's like a professional organization for people who study languages and literatures. So pulled from their website, the Modern Language Association promotes the study and teaching of languages and literatures through its programs, publications, annual convention, and advocacy work. So many people are familiar with the MLA. If you think of the citation style, that's what jumps to the mind of a lot of people. But there's a lot of things that the MLA does outside of the convention, outside of just the citation style, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I do have to give a little bit of a disclaimer. This is something that I have to get used to now, being part of this kind of an organization, that while I'll be talking about some of the things that the MLA does and some of the things that I do, I'm speaking for myself and not for the MLA. These are my opinions, my thoughts, and things of that nature. So, all right, let me give a quick breakdown of my presentation. I'm going to start with a little bit about my professional and academic journey. I'll then go into what the day-to-day of being a program associate is like for the Modern Language Association. And then I will kind of talk about how I use the skills that I developed in my PhD program and beyond that in my role as a program associate. So really trying to pull those threads together of how what I did at UF prepared me for the role that I am in now. And I would be remiss if I did not share some helpful MLA resources with all of you that I think would be beneficial, both thinking about alt-ac careers, about non-ac careers, but also just thinking about professionalization overall and in general. So, all right. So I have a somewhat non-traditional academic journey, which I think sometimes makes my story interesting for people to hear. So I got my Bachelor of Arts in English at Cornell University right before the market crash of 2008. So that was a really fun market to try to get a job in for the first time as an English major. I then got my master's in English at CUNY Brooklyn College after taking some time in between the degrees, and then finished up at the University of Florida, again, after taking time in between the degrees. So in those in-between years, I ended up working at a variety of different industries. So after my undergrad time, I worked for a real estate management company. After or during my master's, I worked for an event planning company for young professionals. After that, I worked for the legal department of a tech company and then moved into a business administration role, let's say. And after UF, I'm now here at the MLA. And what's interesting about kind of that wide range of experience is that while at the time, 22-year-old me might have been like, why am I working for a real estate firm? This is not what I got my degree in. I think the variety of experiences that I've had have prepared me in a very interesting kind of way for the kind of work that I'm doing outside of an academic setting. So thinking very specifically about UF and my experience as a graduate student there, one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that I did a variety of departmental service outside of just taking my classes and outside of teaching. So I worked for the Graduate Comics organization for 2 years. I believe 1 year I was secretary, and then the following year I was vice president. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, what the GCO does is puts on a comic conference every year. The first one I did was on comics and animation, which brought a variety of speakers and presenters from different international comics communities, which was a lot of fun. And then the second one had to be canceled because it was right at the start of the pandemic. And this was before we started having real conversations about how to pivot to fully virtual events. But those experiences, as you'll see, were very useful and are continually useful in the role that I have now. I also worked as a, well, I guess along the editorial pipeline for Image Text, which is a comic studies journal that we house in the English department. I believe working with image text allowed me to hone a lot of my editorial skills, which when paired with the kind of work I've done with my dissertation and other writing is something that was looked favorably upon as part of my resume. And then my last 2 years in the program, I worked as the webmaster. So this is something that makes me a little bit different as far as my journey through the PhD is concerned. While I did teach my first 3 years in the program, I was webmaster for the last 2 years. So I didn't have the same level of teaching experience as a lot of my colleagues will have and do at the end of their program. But I think having that different kind of professionalization experience, let's say, having to work with faculty in a different capacity and having to have a lot of people who were asking different kinds of questions and had different kind of needs for me benefited the kind of work that I ultimately do now. Something else that I think is useful to highlight is that I worked on a variety of different projects outside of my dissertation. So while my dissertation, of course, took up a lot of my time in my life, there were other projects that were very, very important to me, like the podcast that I started. That was actually a pandemic project that started in 2020. But I found that really leaning into podcasting is something that makes me interesting when I talk about the kind of work that I do, when I was interviewing, and that it kind of sets me apart in a way, based on kind of the resume that I'm presenting. I also had the opportunity to do a podcasting institute with the National Humanities Center, which I applied to through the Center for the Humanities in the Public Sphere. So that was also an excellent opportunity to meet a variety of people who are in other humanities disciplines, but have a shared interest in podcasting. And I have made, or let me rephrase that, I have had connections with some of those folks since the Podcasting Institute for different initiatives that we're now doing at the MLA. So it's a great way to kind of make connections, is to find these different areas of interest that you have and how you can support them through different kind of training or different kinds of courses and things of that nature. One other thing just I kind of wanted to mention is that I was kind of an anomaly in that coming into a PhD program, I was pretty convinced that I wanted to go back out, as I was saying, into industry, which was the term that I used. So my mindset perhaps was a little bit different in the program because I had always had a feeling that I would end up in a all AC or a non-AC career. That was kind of a goal of mine from the start. So in that vein, for instance, a lot of my publications are more in edited collections or public humanities style publications rather than journal articles because of how research is counted in different kinds of careers. So that's kind of my journey through the PhD. I'm trying to stick to time so we have plenty of time for Q&A. So forgive me if I'm kind of like motoring through stuff. I'm very happy to answer questions during Q&A about anything that I am going through. One quick thing that I do want to acknowledge before talking about my current role is that luck in a way played a major part of me getting this position. I was searching on the MLA job list. I saw there was an opening for it wasn't a director position, but a position within professional development at the MLA. I applied for that job. I actually did not get that job, but they were in the process of restructuring the department. And because I had interviewed, I was somebody that they reached out to in part of that restructuring. So while I do feel very lucky that I happened upon this kind of position in the right moment, I also think it's important to, in a way, get your ducks in the row so that when a lucky opportunity happens, you're prepared to grab it with both hands. So that's just something I want to acknowledge in talking about my role, my position, and how I got here. So being a program associate for the MLA, my spouse likes to joke that I am a party planner for academics. He also likes to joke that I work for the citation mafia. So that's how he describes my jobs to people. But there are a lot of different things that I do in this position at the MLA. So I'll kind of go through this list. You can think of this as kind of like my day-to-day activities. I don't do all of this stuff necessarily in one day. There are only so many hours in a day. However, I could be working on any of these things in any given week. I played around with the idea of sharing my Google Calendar with you all, but I didn't want to stress people out and thinking about that kind of stuff. So To start, one of the most important things that I work on is the planning, development, and execution of in-person and virtual programming. So we actually just completed a series of webinars on the public humanities, which was very near and dear to me. I helmed the second batch of those webinars, one on podcasting and the other on public writing. So in doing that, I had to make sure that we chose a time that was acceptable with the rest of the MLA's kind of programming calendar. I had to find people who were willing to speak as part of their service to the profession and to our members. I had to planning meetings with everyone to make sure we were all on the same page. And then for these two webinars, I was also kind of the, let's say, the tech person that ran the events. So while I wasn't necessarily the moderator, I was the one fielding questions. I gave an opening speech about our code of conduct for events and things of that nature. So really following the life cycle of an event. We also do larger events that one person is not wholly responsible for. So for example, we run summer seminars for chairs of language and literature departments, which we are actually in the midst of working on right now. There's a lot of exciting pieces with that are moving. They're taking place in June. And we also are an important part of the MLA convention, which takes place every year in January. Because I work for professional development, and actually the last one that we did in January was my first time going to MLA in person, which was very exciting. But I am part of the professional development hub. So that's really helping to field questions about the different kind of careers offerings that we have. We also ran a one-on-one mentoring session that went really, really well. We host discussion groups in our professional development hub, among other things. It's a very, very long kind of extended weekend to run, but it is a lot of fun. So there is that kind of event planning element that gets tossed in there. I also to assist with the executive committee of the Associations of Departments of English. So they meet once a month. I'm part of those meetings. They also have an in-person retreat that I help to facilitate. I am currently in the process of spearheading our academic program services outreach initiatives. So what that kind of entails is thinking about when we talk about what MLA does for departments, how are we expressing that information? How is it related on our websites? How are we contacting our members to ask if they are part of academic program services? So that's a project that shortly after I started became something that I was interested in, and now I'm kind of taking control of the directions that we're going in, managing the projects that we're working on in close relationship with my boss. Moving on from that, I edit and refine ad hoc committee reports and publications. I just got back some comments on some edits that I'm doing. So that's also something that's kind of sitting over my head, going through reports, making comments, making suggestions. Oh, this is a long list. I'm a little impressed with myself, actually. One of the things that we do is also prepare grant applications because the MLA is a nonprofit organization. While our funding comes from a variety of different sources, one of those is getting grants to help us run programming. And it's actually really exciting. We just were funded for a Mellon grant for $1.5 million for a program that we're calling Pathways, Recruitment, Retention, and Career Readiness, which, quote, promotes recruitment and retention of students in the humanities, especially students of color, first-generation college students, and Pell Grant recipients. So this is super exciting, and I get to be a part of helping to facilitate this grant. And one of the things that we're looking to do, and actually, Jacob, I'm probably going to email you about this, is we're looking to collect stories from different language and literature departments about their successes in doing different kind of recruitment, retention, and career readiness initiatives. So this is something that we're really excited about in department. And it's brand new. Like, I think the press release went out this week. But being a part of these grant applications, being a part of the team that helps to facilitate them is part of my role. And then lastly, one of the things that I've kind of slid into is editing our event recordings to put on the MLA website. So for the public humanities webinars, while the event itself was only for MLA members, we are posting the videos publicly for any and everyone to watch, but you can't just take a webinar and throw it up online, right? Sometimes you have those awkward pauses when people are answering questions or when you ask for something from the Q&A and nobody answers. So I go through, I handle getting all those together, making them look a little shiny, and then getting them up on the website. So I do a little bit of that website updating for the team as well. So keep it moving. Am I good on time, Sarah? I was going to set my watch, but okay. So using my degree in my role, one of the things that I think about a lot when I've talked to friends who are thinking about alt-ac, non-ac careers is how do you use language that speaks to people who are outside of the academy, but also speaks to the kind of work that you do as a graduate student. So that's something I've tried to distill a little bit here in this slide. So first we have research, which is obviously something you do a lot of in graduate school. And in this role that I have, I've been asked to do a variety of different kinds of research, including research on other scholarly societies, from what they offer to how much it costs to even join them, collecting scholarly and publicly available materials on specific topics, researching different academics, researchers, and other interesting people who would make good speakers. And for the Pathways project, I actually had to do a bunch of gathering about different initiatives that are already in place for different groups of students as far as retention, and career readiness and things like that are related to. So research is an important thing that a variety of different roles will be looking for that you already have a lot of experience in as a graduate student. In this role, I also lean a lot on my polished writing and editorial skills, as well as understanding of the writing process, which I think is kind of a key distinction to make. So while I'm often writing copy for our website or for different events, or also working on editing reports, there's also a sense of understanding the flow of writing and how to, let's say, effectively be a part of that process, right? For example, a lot of things I write have to go through editorial, or we're plan events that are related to the process of writing. So just having an understanding of how writing works and is created is an important part of the role. Another thing that is useful is project management. Thinking about your dissertation as a huge project that you are managing and working on, and all of the different ways that that can possibly come together is something to think about. In this role, I work on a lot of projects that have a long lifespan, so I have to pay attention to deadlines. I have to keep in mind all the moving pieces, make sure that I'm keeping an eye on those things. And those are all things that I did over the course of my dissertation project. So that's another thing to kind of, when you're putting together materials, think of. Demonstrated event planning experience. As I said, I work with the GCO, but also pulling on past event planning experiences. Public speaking, that was something I was thinking about through the other presentations, right? When you're speaking for class or doing presentations, this is something that comes up a lot in my day-to-day activities, be it speaking for a webinar, speaking to people at the Professional Development Hub who don't know where they're supposed to go. I'm constantly having to interact with the public. Zipping right along, an understanding of the academy. Now, this is kind of an interesting point because in my role, I'm dealing with people who are part of the academy. Having an understanding of the things that go into what their day-to-day lives look like is actually important in trying to figure out the kind of programming that would actually be useful, would actually be helpful. But one of the things that we're really excited about in team is that myself and another of my colleagues are both recent graduates. So we're also thinking a lot about what grad students need, what the MLA can do for grad students that perhaps it's not already doing. And then the last two I have here are my public humanities experience. That's something that I'm hoping to pull more into my role, thinking about what podcasting might look like for the MLA, but also in putting on these events related to the public humanities, and also an ability to work collaboratively. I know I've had conversations with a lot of folks that collaborative work is something that might be hard to come by in humanities graduate programs, but I think it's something worth really leaning into because whenever you have a job, you're going to have to be working with other people. So it's important to think about how to have these kind of collaborative relationships. So I think I'm going a little over time, so I'm going to be super fast here. I have a list of helpful MLA resources that I'm going to share with everyone. I'll actually, I can share this PowerPoint. I'm happy to share it because there's a lot of great stuff in here, including a diverse career pathways webinar that we're holding on April 20th that I'll be moderating. So if you'd like to see my face again and talk more diverse careers, that's something that we'll be doing. And we also have our public humanities incubator. Applications for that are going to be opening up soon. So if you have questions about that, you can email me or another one of my colleagues. I can give you information about that. And then last but not least, one final piece of advice that I'm happy to talk more about as well, in talking with another friend who went a kind of alt-at route. One of the things that is very useful to think about is how to convert your CV to your cover letter, because while they are similar documents, they are very, very different genres of documents, even though they share a similar name. And you don't want to try to be converting your CV to a cover letter the night before you're sending out a job app. Doing a resume, or excuse me, I'm saying CV to cover letter, I mean CV to resume, my apologies. You don't want to try to convert your CV to your resume in one night. It's its own kind of process. It's its own kind of conversion process. And I am happy to share my materials with anyone that would be interested. My resume is, of course, a little out of date now, but happy to talk about that process with anyone as well. So I'll drop my email addresses in the chat for anyone that has any questions or would like to talk. I'm also on Twitter, even though Twitter is apparently for old people now, and that hurts my feelings. But I'm also on Instagram as well, if you want to see pictures of my cats. And I will end there so we have plenty of time for Q&A. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ayanni, and let's thank these fantastic panelists, and thank you for sharing your stories and inspiring us.